Welcome to the kitchen, everyone. I'm here today in our house with Elvie, and we're making a cooking video about how to make sfogliatelle. Actually, it's more of a postcard. It's a postcard to our friends, the Choppies, Julie, Jerry, and Sandra, who are the bakers in the Choppy family. And we were visiting them last year, and they were kind enough to give us their walnut sauce recipe. So we're gonna give you a demonstration today about how to make these pastry. Now, Elvie, if you focus down on the pastry, we're gonna be quiet and I'm gonna tell you how you know it's a really well-made sfogliatelle. Just listen. That nice crackle. A sfogliatelle is nice and crunchy on the outside, creamy with ricotta citrus filling on the inside. Question we always are asked when people try these, are they hard to make? And my response is, nothing's hard if you know what you're doing. And we're gonna make this video, and we're gonna be very exacting about every single step you have to take to make this pastry. And I'm very, very confident that Julie and Jerry and Sandra will become experts on these in a short period of time. So, to begin, if we wanted to have this sfogliatelle, you would make your dough. Let's say you wanted to enjoy it on a Sunday. The dough needs to be made on a Friday. The filling needs to be made on a Saturday, and you assemble it and bake it whenever you want it on a Sunday. So we'll start the video. The first thing I'm going to demonstrate, the video will be in 3 parts. First, I'm going to show you how to make the dough. Then I'll show you how to make the filling, and then we'll finally do the final preparation on it. So let's get out our notebooks, and Elvie, if you want to just focus on the recipe, and we can get that out of the way first. Okay, she's showing you the filling recipe, which is 8 ounces of orange juice, half a cup of sugar, half a cup of semolina, 2 egg yolks, half a teaspoon of cinnamon, a teaspoon of vanilla, the zest from 2 lemons, and 15 ounces of ricotta cheese. Okay, I'm gonna flip this over, and this is the recipe for the dough. The dough is made from 1 pound, 2 ounces of bread flour, a teaspoon of salt, 4 ounces of milk, 6 ounces of water, and then on a separate part of the recipe would be 8 ounces of lard and 8 ounces of butter. Now, a recipe, if I were just to give anyone this recipe, it's completely useless, because the most important part of learning this pastry is the technique. As with most things in cooking and baking, technique is everything. So let's go to the mixing bowl, and we'll start to make the dough. Okay, we're over here at the KitchenAid mixer, and this particular recipe is not for the how shall we say, beginner baker. If you don't have a KitchenAid, it's not something you want to involve yourself in. So you're going to want to need a KitchenAid with a hook. What I have in the bowl now is the liquid ingredients, the milk and the water. In this bag, I have my 18 ounces of bread flour and a teaspoon of salt measured out. And I'm just going to put it in there. Okay. I'm going to put it on second speed, and I'm going to mix it for 5 minutes. Every single step of this recipe, I'm going to be very, very specific. And there's reasons for that we'll get into later. But let's just turn the mixer on second speed. And the dough's going to gather. It's going to mix it. If you're a baker and you've made other things, and you look into the bowl and you're starting to question it, you're going to have to trust this recipe. Okay? So I'm going to mix the dough, 5 minutes, and then we'll get back and I'll show you how. Our 5 minutes is up. I'll turn the machine off. This is our dough. At this point, we take it over to the work table. Now, if you're going to make this pastry, you're going to need a large area. When I roll the dough out, the dimensions are usually about 26 inches long and 20 inches wide. This is a soapstone counter. I would recommend a large counter space, possibly with granite or soapstone or something like that. Okay, so here's the fun part. We're gonna let this dough rest for 17 minutes. But when you pull it out of the bowl, you're gonna notice it's really silky, but yet rubbery. And that's how the gluten was developed in the mixing process. So we have either all-purpose or bread flour we're gonna use for dusting. But when the dough comes out of the bowl, this isn't something that you have to be very gentle about. If you've had a bad day, you could beat it up a little bit. What we're looking for when it first comes out of the bowl is about 10 inches long and about 6 inches wide. So I take my rolling pin and I do this. And when I get to about, if you notice the dough, when I roll it, it's gonna shrink immediately. It just pulls back in on itself, okay? What we're giving it 17 minutes for is time enough for it to relax so we can get it to the dimension that we need to put the lard and the butter in, okay? So I'm gonna dust it generously, and I'm gonna flip it over. I'm gonna cover this with plastic, set a timer for 17 minutes, and when we come back, you're gonna notice as I handle the dough, it's a drastically different dough, okay?
Yes.
Okay, Julie, I just put the dough on the counter. I'm back at the mixing bowl. I've taken the hook off of the mixer. I put the paddle on. And what I have here in front of me is weighed out 8 ounces of lard. And there's 2 4-ounce sticks of butter. You want to put them in the bowl with the paddle and you want to beat it until it's super, super fluffy. And by fluffy, you'll see when I take it out of the bowl, because we take it out of the bowl at that point and put it into a pastry bag. The sfogliatelle is a Neapolitan pastry. In Italy, the farther south you go, the more lard or pork products you're going to see, and more fried pastries actually. So let's take the butter out, put it in with the lard, set the paddle, and beat it as fluffy as you can get it. Because if it's too dense, it's not going to spread properly for you. We're going to let that go a little bit. We're going to head over to the range, and I'm going to show you how to make the filling. All right, ladies, we're over at the range, and what I have in the pan is the orange juice, the egg yolks, and the sugar and the cinnamon. You're going to make sure that you have a very heavy gauge pan, that the bottom of it is really thick. You don't make your filling with a cheap pan, if that's good advice. Okay, so we put it on the flame. Over here, I have my lemon that's been diced very, very fine, my semolina flour, and my ricotta cheese. The lemon, by the way, comes from Mrs. Lyon's backyard. She mailed Elvie persimmons and lemons, and it was a real treat. So there's a little bit of Monterey in these pastry today. All right, so we turn the flame on, and we start to heat the orange juice and sugar, and we're going to keep a stir on it. When you start to see when it starts to get warm, you'll see a little bubbles on the side. You're going to take your semolina flour and you're going to start to sprinkle it. And the reason we're doing this is so it doesn't get a lot of lumps on us. We're going to cook it, and when we're done cooking it, it's going to look very similar to a roux if you were making a sauce. Really thick. At that point, we're going to introduce the ricotta, stir it in, put it in the bowl, and refrigerate it. At this point, also, you can throw in Mrs. Lyon's lemon, who, by the way, just as something for you to take note of that I know she's trying to disguise. For years, she was telling you guys she was French. She's not. She's actually Basque, and that came out in her DNA test. So you can give her a call and say, "Hello, Mrs. Lyons. We know who you are. You are not French. You are Basque." Okay? And I know Mrs. Lyons will be watching this. So hello, Yvonne. Hope you enjoy this. You can see now it's starting to thicken. What's happening is the semolina is absorbing the orange juice, and it's acting just as any other flour would. So we're not done yet, but you can see it's starting to bubble a little bit and it's starting to get way thicker. We're still not ready because even though it's bubbling, it still has the capacity to get thicker than this. And you want all that orange juice completely absorbed, and you want it, the term we use in cooking is cooked out. You want to cook this out. Okay? Now it looks like a roux. And we're almost done. But what I like to do is get a lot of resistance on the whip. I like to feel like it's turning to cement. Okay, that's as far as you want to go. What you see here, you turn the flame off. Turn your flame off. Get your rubber spatula. Take your ricotta cheese and mix it in. Now, when I made this recipe, I made it so that you're going to be able to make 24 sfogliatelle, and I also made it convenient because the filling recipe is 15 ounces, which is exactly what they package your ricotta in the supermarket. Just a matter of convenience. That's how I like to make recipes, so I just have to buy one less thing for me to measure, okay? We'll take the spatula and completely incorporate the ricotta cheese, and when that's done, we refrigerate it and we'll be ready to put the pastry together on Sunday. Okay. Okay, bakers, it's been 17 minutes and we're coming back to the dough. I want to talk about that a little bit because Elvie mentioned to me, she said 17 minutes sounds a little weird. Why is it 17 minutes? I've been doing this long enough where I know 16 minutes, the dough is not relaxed enough. I've found from the many times that I've made it, at 17 minutes, you're going to be able to work with the dough a little bit. Never go under. If it's there for 20 minutes, life's good. You can still work with it. But 17 minutes is when the alarm goes off and you know you're going to be able to work with the dough. All right. Making this pastry is more of a tactile experience. If there is a part of making this pastry that you're going to feel awkward at, this is it. So I'm going to work with my hands, and that's what you need to watch. And one thing I will mention is do not be afraid to dust heavily. You can't dust this too heavily. So you'll watch, I'm going to take flour, and I'm going to spread it over the whole surface that I'll be rolling this dough, okay? I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to take my rolling pin. Now watch what the dough does initially. It doesn't shrink anywhere near as much as it did when we first took it out of the bowl. So it's loosened up a little bit. The other thing is the dimensions. I have a tape measure here. You're going to want to roll this dough about 26 inches wide or long, 26 inches long, and about 20 inches wide. So watch what I do. I'm working with the rolling pin, and I'll occasionally put the rolling pin down and feel the dough with my hand, this part of my hand. And what my hand is telling me is where the thick parts are. So when I feel where the thick part is, I'm able to go back with it, with the pin. What we're looking for is to keep the dough the same exact diameter throughout, okay? So we'll do that. Now, I'm at this point, and I'm just gonna measure it. At this point, we're at 19 inches by about a foot. I don't measure anymore because I've been doing it, long enough where I know what the dough is supposed to look like. The first few times you do it, keep a tape measure handy so you'll know when you're ready. Okay, you just saw me dust that again, and I'm flipping it. I'm gonna roll it towards me, and I'm gonna roll it away from me. And if you've ever made strudel, there's a similar process to making strudel dough. And the idea is to get the dough as thin as you possibly can. The nice crunchiness of the sfogliatelle is from getting as many layers as possible. And when we put the fat in here, and roll it in, I'm going to show you a technique where you can get as many layers as possible. Now, I'm showing you guys this pastry, and I grew up in New York, and we had a lot of great Italian bakeries, and this is always in the pastry part of the bakery. So when I went to Monterey and I met Elvie, I noticed there was a lot of Italians in Monterey, and there is mostly fishermen and people in the trades, but I never found a sfogliatelle in Monterey, or a cannoli, or a decent slice of pizza for that matter. So maybe Elio can explain that, but I don't know why. I'm just glad that you guys are going to be able to do this and enjoy it. Was that a snobby statement, Elvie?
Quite snobby, quite used to it.
Well, look, I worked for Gicco Kane on Cannery Row making pizza, and looking back, I should have wore a bag on my head because it was absolutely the most disgusting pizza I ever had. That being said, let's measure this dough again and see where we're at. We're at 16 inches by 24 inches. So we almost have enough width here. And I'm running my hands. You'll notice I'm always doing this with my hands when I'm making it because you can't feel the thickness of the dough with the rolling pin that well. That's pretty thick here. I got thickness here. I'm gonna go back, push it out, do that. Okay. You wanna make sure the dough does not adhere itself to the counter. And you do that by making sure it's adequately dusted at all times. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to dust it one more time. I'm going to flip it. I'm going to put a final roll on it, and then we're going to introduce the fat. Okay, you guys watch Pasta Grannies. You can see how the Italian grandmothers are experts in forming all their pastas. And that's not something you can hand somebody a recipe for. That requires a lot of practice. And this is one of those pastries that you'll get the feeling in your hands and you'll know. You're not gonna get it the first time. First time you make it, you're gonna feel a little awkward and the pastry might not be the best one you're ever gonna make. But if you practice, and by practice I say, if you make them once a month even, every time you make it, you'll realize exactly where you want to be with the dough. Okay, so we're ready to introduce the lard. 26 by 18, which is close enough. If I want to get 20, I'll take the pin and push it back even farther. Okay, Team Choppy. In the bowl here, you can see the butter and the lard has been beaten together to what I call a fluffy state. There's no lumps. There should not be any lumps, and it should be easily spread about. Okay, what Elvie has set up for me here is a plastic pastry bag put into a glass, which she claims makes it easier. So that's how I'm going to do it. Usually I just take the bag and wrap it around my hand, but you know Elvie, right?
Yes, they do.
They teach you that at Santa Catalina School for Girls.
No, they didn't.
In home economics class?
We didn't have home ec.
I bet you didn't. Okay.
And this was all room temperature before you started.
Okay, I'm sorry. Before I started to beat these, last night I pulled the butter out of the cooler and the lard was at room temperature. So before you even put it in the bowl, all the ingredients should be at room temperature. Okay? And the other thing I neglected to say was when we were making the filling, the vanilla extract is also in at that point. All right, so we're almost ready to work with the dough. You take your pastry bag. I get these on Amazon. They're like so cheap, but they're great to work with and you're gonna understand why when we make the rest of the dough. So the reason why we're using a pastry bag to pipe this butter and lard onto it. If we were to take the butter and lard directly out of the mixing bowl and put it on here, we risk tearing the dough, which is not something we want to do. We want to get this distributed over the surface of the dough as evenly as possible. So what I do is I pipe it in this way every few inches, like that, so that when I get the rubber scraper or spatula and start to spread it, it's already spread pretty evenly. And what we want to do is make sure we get everything out of the bag. Bag's completely empty. And we're going to take a rubber spatula, and we're not going to dig in. We're going to use the end of it, and we're very gently going to push the fat and spread it like that. And you can see that the tool, we're not violating the dough. We're not tearing the dough. If you were not to pipe it on there and just, plop the fat right onto the dough and then try to spread it, you're going to risk putting holes in the dough. And holes in the dough is not a good thing, just so you know. It's not the end of the world, but it's not a good thing. So what you want to do is spread it to the end on all sides and distribute this fat as evenly as possible. That's very, very important. And when we go to assemble the dough, the pastry later, I'll show you why, okay? So Elle, how's it look? Like smooth or?
It does look smooth except for right down here.
Where?
There.
There?
Yeah, it looks a
Okay.
little there. There you go.
There you go, got it? Okay, it's always good to have a spotter. All right, now the fun part. We're gonna roll it, but rolling it it's a lot easier than it sounds. All right, this pastry, the dough itself, if you were in baking class, they would tell you that the dough, it's a laminated dough. The French make their croissants, their puff pastry, the pain au chocolat and all those items. If you go to Cafe Bachelor, he has a wonderful, wonderful pastry shop over there in PG. And most of his doughs are turn doughs. The Italians make a lamination, but this is more of a concentric lamination. We're gonna roll it. And when we roll it, I'm gonna start now, and Elvie, if you could just focus on my fingers. I'm gonna take the tips of my fingers, I'm gonna pull back on the dough, and I'm just gonna try to get the bottom to make contact so I could start to roll it, okay? And as I pull it, you can see the dough stretching, which is a wonderful thing, because as we stretch the dough and tuck it like that, we're gonna be able to get as many circles as possible. So you go from one side to the other, and you're pulling, and you're constantly trying to stretch the dough. And I do that by lifting the dough a little bit and pulling. See that? Watch the dough. It's stretching it. Don't stretch it, more than it wants to go. And you can continue to do that. When you get about halfway through, you're going to start to see the dough on that side come towards you. See that? All right, so that tells me there's more weight now on this side. So what I do to make sure that I get as many layers as possible, I'll pick this end of the dough up and pull it that way. See that? Mm-hmm. Okay, watch. Wow.
Well, you pulled it pretty far.
Pulled it pretty far. That, people say, how'd you get it so flaky? That's the flake, okay? If you were to just take the dough and roll it, you'll have a pastry. You're not gonna have a really crunchy, delicious pastry. So we're gonna finish rolling this. I'm gonna show you what you should do with it. You okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. Now watch. When I pull it, see the other side? Now the dough's coming at me. So what I want to do is come to the side and make sure I maintain the same width. And it'll pull. You get to a certain point where I'd say 80% of the way through, you may want to give it one last little stretch, but we're pretty much done getting our circles here. We could just roll it right up at this point. Okay, so I want you to just understand handling the dough, feeling what the dough is supposed to do, feeling the elasticity of it is how you're going to make a really good, crunchy, delicious sfogliatelle. Okay, so we're just going to roll this now. We're going to finish rolling it because we don't want to make a motion picture here. We're just making a little cooking video, right? I don't want to be here all day either. So let's measure the length. It should be about 36 inches. It's 33 inches. We're going to cut it in half, wrap it in plastic, put it on a sheet pan, and refrigerate it for 2 days. And after 2 days, this is going to be ready to assemble the pastry. Okay?
Go.
All right. We have our saran wrap. We take our dough, tuck it in on that side, and roll it. And this is a half sheet pan, and it fits exactly on a half a sheet pan when you've rolled it to the proper length. Okay, easy enough. Lately, we've been doing a lot more with this dough other than pastry. We've been making hors d'oeuvres out of it, which is really, really delicious. But
With the sausage.
with sausage, yeah. But well, we can talk about that later. These are going to go into the refrigerator. I made dough 2 days ago because we knew we were making the video, so I'm going to pull that dough out and I'm going to show you how to put the dough together and bake it. Jesse's here. Hi, this is Chef Jesse, my assistant.
Jesse.
Hi, Jesse. You gonna eat some pastry later? Actually, Jesse went out to the compost pile today and stole some bread that was thrown in there, so
And here's Joni.
Jesse doesn't get any treats.
Jojo.
All right.
Yes. All right, back to Donna.
All right, everybody out. Let's go. Out. Out. Good. Okay, bakers. This is the stick of dough that has been in the cooler for a couple days. I'm going to slice the end off because the end is usually, wasted. And I'm going to cut this. It looks like, I said the recipe yields 24. So I'm probably going to cut them about that thick, whatever that is. An inch? Is it an inch?
About, yeah.
About? Okay, so let's cut them and see how many we get here. 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Ooh, good. We got a better yield. All right.
And this is just the one stick, which is half of the recipe.
Half of the recipe. All right, let's look at it and talk about what we did and grade ourselves. You can see it's a circle. It looks like a log almost. If I was in baking class, I would get a B minus. And the reason I would get a B minus is you could see that ring has a little bit more fat than the rest of them. But this ring looks perfect. Okay, that's an A minus. And the reason why it's an A minus is it doesn't have quite that many rings. Okay, so what I like to do when I bake them off, I only process them about 6 or 7 at a time. I take the other ones and put them in the refrigerator. These are best made from a very cold state. All right. So what I'm going to do here is just take these guys, put them in the fridge, and I'm going to show you how to put your pastry together. Okay. Now, putting the pastry together is less difficult than actually making the dough, but there's still some technique to it that you have to know. I keep a bin of bread flour handy, and I keep my hand well floured. What you want to do is put a little flour on the board, and you're going to use the palm of your hand. And what you want to do is press down in the middle and try to wiggle it 4 ways at once. I don't know if that makes any sense. You take it and push down and push the dough so that you're trying to make those concentric rings flatten out without them going in any one direction. All right? And that takes a little practice, but you'll get the feel of it. Good. What I like to use to finish it is a tortilla press. And you could find one of those on Amazon for about 20 bucks. But you know, everything here is handmade. If you were in a bakery that's Italian pastry, a lot of their stuff is mechanized. You know, they use a lot of machines to get the effect. But you're doing everything by hand, which is great. Okay? So once you get to this point, you have 6 of them pushed out. You want to take your tortilla press.
Go.
Ready? Okay. We have them. They went through the tortilla press. We're taking our thumb. We're making a little indentation in the middle, and we're kind of pulling the sides. We're going to take the filling. When the filling's in there, pull it a tiny little bit, fold it over on itself, and then just pinch it. When you pinch it, if you keep your fingers well dusted, it's not going to stick. You don't need any egg wash, any of that stuff. Just pinch it like that. So here we go. We're going to pull it apart a little bit, put a little indentation in the middle, take our filling, pull it, turn it, and pinch it.
And you're pinching it also to get any extra air out of there, right?
Well, when you press down on it, the air will come out.
Okay.
And what you're doing is shaping it like a clam, which is what we call it. We call them clams. We don't call them sfogliatelle because then people might think we're immigrants or something like that, which, you know, that'll get us thrown out of town. So we call them clams, and they look like clams, and it's a lot easier to say, right? So we'll do that. Now, the baking part of it, you're going to need a convection oven at 400 degrees. Back here in the East, if you go to a supermarket and you see some of these in the case, boy, do they look good. They look perfect because things are mechanized. They get a lot of those layers that I was showing you. If you purchase it, you're going to be nothing but disappointed because I don't know what they use for filling, but it's definitely not ricotta cheese and citrus. It's some kind of whatever. I don't know. And the baking process, when we bake these, we have to baste them. We have to baste them before they go in the oven. We have to baste them 12 minutes in, and then we have to baste them again when they come out of the oven. I know in the supermarket, they'll buy the frozen ones in a case, put them on a sheet pan, pop them in the oven. When they come out, they dust them with sugar, and that's it. They're not basting them. So they have a tendency to be rather dry. And if you've ever had a really good sfogliatelle, you're not going to be a customer of the ones. And the shame is they look great. They really look great, but they're not. Not for you to worry in Monterey because you don't have any. If the choppy bakers get proficient at this, I'd be perfectly willing to make a cannoli video and show you how to make cannolis, which is another thing. It's very difficult to find a good one, but we make them here, nice and fresh. We make our own ricotta, and we make our own shells, and that's another day. Okay. So, what are we going to bake off of? 7 of them?
Yeah, you got 7.
Okay, we'll bake 7. And we'll do the other ones later. What you want in a pan is a mixture of half butter and half lard melted. And we're going to baste these, and we're going to put them in the oven at 400 degrees, and we're going to set the timer at 12 minutes, okay? Okay, we're ready to get these in the oven. In the pan here, I have a couple tablespoons of butter and a couple tablespoons of lard that I've melted, and I'm going to baste all the pastry. These pastry are going to go in the oven at 400 degrees for 12 minutes. I'm going to pull them out at that time and baste them again and set the timer for another 12 minutes. And when they come out of the oven, I'm going to baste them again. You won't need any more basting material from the pan because when these go in the oven, they're going to be in a pool of the fat that will use the fat that's on the pan to baste them again. Okay, so here we go. 12 minutes, 400 degrees. Okay.
Ready.
Ready. 4, 3, 2, 1. Timer off. 12 minutes have gone by. I'm pulling the pastry out. And I know what you're thinking. Oh my God, that looks disgusting. Well, bear with.
Bear with.
Because we're going to baste them and put them back in for another 12 minutes. And by the time we're done, what you see on the pan will be reabsorbed back into the pastry.
Oh my God, they're so flaky already.
They're flaky already, but you know, you baste them, you keep them nice and moist. We're going back in the oven now, another 12 minutes, okay?
Okay.
And the other tip I would say is to reverse the pan when it goes back in the oven. And by that I mean, that was the front. What was the front is now the back. And away we go. See you in 12 minutes. Timer went off. We're going to pull these pastry and we're going to baste them again. So you have a cooling rack. Just take your pastry and put them on the cooling rack. Let them cool down, and then you could dust them with some powdered sugar, and you're ready to go. So, Choppy Bakers, I hope you're ready for this. Elio, don't let them slide, man. Get them in the kitchen. And Elio, buon appetito.
Daria.
And my friends, say hi to Leslie in Washington State. Say hi to my friend Joe in Carolina somewhere. My friend Daria in Italy. Mi dispiace Daria, questo classe è in inglese. Magari prossimo lezione noi facciamo in italiano, eh? What do you think?
Bravo.
Success. Bravo. Okay.